I wasn't planning on being on this long, but for a few of my more recent shiny hunts, I've just always felt that something was off in the reaction videos I recorded. Plus, I've kind of been dealing with quite a few other things outside of anything that I may be doing online. That being said, I've always enjoyed the process of coming up with strategies for catching certain shiny Pokemon, so if I find the time to do it, I might make some videos that explain certain shiny hunting strategies in depth. Anyway, that's not all I wanted to talk about today. We're not too far away from the release of Sword and Shield on the Switch, which I think is a lot better introduction for main series Pokemon than Let's Go was. The instant that catching Pokemon is replaced with a Safari Zone mechanic that has motion control on top of it for some reason, that's the instant that I'm just not interested in the game. However, in the case of Sword and Shield, there's plenty of stuff that I'm excited for there. Namely stuff like the Wild Area, the Max Raid battles, Galarian forums. I'm so glad that's not just freaking Kanto anymore, thank goodness. That bugged me so much in Gen 7. Now, of course, with all the good stuff about Sword and Shield, there is one major bad thing that a lot of people have been talking about recently, and that relates to the cutting of a bunch of Pokemon from the game entirely, which is exactly what you'd see a lot of people with the Bring Back National Dex hashtag talking about, which I don't necessarily like that hashtag in general. Sun and Moon didn't have a National Dex, but it doesn't have the same problem that Sword and Shield has. Because at least for everything that you couldn't catch in Sun and Moon, you could still transfer everything from a previous game up into Sun and Moon. This is no longer the case with Sword and Shield. And of course, the internet reaction to all of this has been very negative. I mean, you just have to go take one look at that Treehouse video where Masuda first talked about it. Now, me personally, I don't think this is a major deal breaker for the games, but I don't really see it as a positive aspect either. For the past 4 generations, Game Freak has always made sure that there was a way to transfer anything from a previous generation up to the current generation and then use it in your journey. So for them to suddenly go back on this is kind of unexpected for a lot of people, including myself. Now, I do understand that game development is a very tricky process. Things can go wrong sometimes, and maybe that's what happened during development. That being said, there's a ton of better ways that Game Freak and the Pokemon Company could have gone about presenting this information to people. For starters, how come this announcement wasn't necessarily made during the press conference that Pokemon held 2 weeks before that Treehouse segment? They were talking about Pokemon Home within that conference. And I guarantee you that this decision to cut a bunch of Pokemon from the games entirely was made well before this conference was even a thing. And speaking of Pokemon Home, this actually raises several questions about how Pokemon Bank is going to be supported by Game Freak and the Pokemon Company going forward. Like, for example, will the servers keep running when Pokemon Home gets released? And if they are going to keep running, how long will they keep running for? Will they ever shut them down so that way we can't transfer anything from the DS and 3DS games over to the Switch games? Are the Pokemon that are currently stored on Bank going to need to be transferred in the future to make sure that they don't get lost forever when Bank's servers shut down? Or are they just going to be automatically migrated over to Home once that time comes? How much is a Home subscription going to be? Is it going to be the exact same as what we've already been paying for Bank? Or is it going to be double that? There's just so many questions right now about how the transfer and storage of various Pokemon is going to work from this generation onward. And a lot of these questions wouldn't even have to be asked if the Bank app from the 3DS was simply just ported over to the Switch. Then there would at least be some kind of understanding that the servers for Bank on the 3DS would be running for quite some time to allow for any kind of transfer to the Switch. In regards to additional features that Home has over Bank, the only thing that we really know about so far is that we can trade all of our Pokemon that are stored within Home with other users of Home. But what good will that do if all the Pokemon that don't appear in Sword and Shield won't even be able to be transferred over to Sword and Shield from home. If there was a battle simulator, sort of like how Showdown works, present within home, then I could understand this a little bit more. But currently, they haven't said anything about there being a battle simulator like that. So I'm just led to believe that the Pokemon that aren't in Sword and Shield are just going to be sitting within home until Game Freak decides that we can use the Pokemon again. There's also been no concrete mention of patches for Sword and Shield that would make it so we could transfer every Pokemon from a previous game into these games. Personally, I feel the least Game Freak and the Pokemon Company could have done to at least mitigate some of the backlash was to put out a list of all of the Pokemon that will be returning from a previous generation into the new games. It does no good to know about this change well in advance when we don't even know the specifics about said change well in advance. In fact, you have a lot of people making up a bunch of stuff right now about how what we've seen in trailers so far is all that's going to be in the Dex. Personally, I think it's going to be a lot more, but I don't think it's going to be as generous as some other people are saying, where they're thinking that there's going to be over 600 returning from previous games into these games. If Game Freak and the Pokemon Company simply put out a list, a lot of these misconceptions would just end right there. Now, I know a lot of people would be saying, but that kind of list would be spoilers for the game. Why don't you just get it from a data mine? And these people, I don't think, understand that a data mine tells you way more about a game than just what Pokemon are going to be featured in it. Like, for example, if they haven't revealed a new Pokemon yet, you would know about that from a data mine. Any new legendaries would be in there. Any new mythicals would be in there as well, considering that as of right now, they have no plans to patch in any Pokemon. You'd have a bunch of new Galar forms, the plot of the story spoiled, the specific battles you would get into, the region itself, the areas within the region, where you could catch every Pokemon, how you would be able to catch it. I mean, there's just a lot of stuff that comes within a data mine. Also, there's some Pokemon that we only know are in the games, not because of an English trailer that was released, but rather because of a trailer that was released elsewhere. Like, for example, the recent Japanese trailers, that was the only way that you knew Krogunk, Toxicroak, Purloin, and Liepard were even confirmed for Galar. And to make matters worse, sometimes an official website will just randomly upload some screenshot that confirms the existence of a Pokemon. Noibat and Noivern, I only knew about their existence because Joe Merrick had pointed it out that an official screenshot of Noibat was uploaded to the Chinese website of all places. So why is some of this info spoilers to one country but not to another? Why can't it all just be in one place for everyone to look at, and for people like Joe Merrick to actually have easier access to? But in regards to some of this being a spoiler for some people, yeah, sure, I can understand that. But they could still make a web page that gives a list of all the Pokemon in a spoiler-free way. And basically all they'd have to have you do is have a search box that lets you type in any Pokemon's name. It would present a suggestion for the Pokemon. You click on that Pokemon in general, and then it would give you a simple yes or no answer as to whether or not that Pokemon only would be in the region. And if someone happens to find out what the entire Dex is just by doing a bunch of searches, well, that's their own fault for getting spoiled on what's in the game. I've technically already made a concept of that site in my spare time. If you go to nextgenbordercheck.com, you'll see that I've basically already made what I was describing. And most of that site was pretty much done within a week. Sure, I did work on it a little bit past that initial week, but I never really spent a full 8-hour day working on that site at any given point. And if someone like me can make a site like that, just within my spare time, not necessarily giving it my full attention, then I'm sure a team of a few more people at the Pokemon Company could easily just make something as good or even better. But I guess for the time being, I'll just leave this site up, just so other people may have some sort of way to look at all the Pokemon that will be transferable without necessarily being spoiled on anything else. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and tell you whether or not to buy the games. That's something that you should honestly decide for yourself. We are still a couple months away from when the games are officially going to be released. Maybe there's going to be something new revealed that changes how we may look at the games right now. There's just a lot of questions that have yet to be answered about the future of the series going forward, and what Game Freak's plans are going to be going forward. I just hope that a lot of my fears about the series don't become a reality, and that it continues to be a series that's loved by quite a few people.